really key part of this. You know, most of the time I've ever used magic for anything, it was really for either, I'll admit, my own personal knowledge or to help others. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of almost have to be a little selfless when you're using it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise it just seems to taint it and do weird stuff. And I think that doesn't really come across in this. Like, everybody in this movie really is kind of a selfish California teenager, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
And it really comes back to bite them.
Bonnie?
That I don't think you see, like, yes, you definitely see those kind of baby witches that are coming into it for their own power and because they want to take control of their destiny, but there's an awful lot more that get into it because they want to learn to help people in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones that really turn out to be amazing at this.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got that selfless energy about them, which I feel like is so important to the spiritual aspects of what
I don't know. I find it very interesting how when something happens to somebody in the craft, all of our brothers and sisters come to the aid of said person.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna say it.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I would never have, like, get up in the middle of, whatever I'm doing and randomly wind up going out to various people's homes and helping them through whatever
I have no idea.
No idea. That sounds so out of character for me.
So out of character.
I'm just this curmudgeon that, sits in my vast library here,
Yeah, and it always goes both ways. It the minute somebody puts out the call in regards to anything, you drop what you're doing if you can and you help said person. Our friend, the wise and pervy sage, something happened to their house. We went and helped,
If you want to look at magic as being able to make us allow us to do anything, if you're not using it to be kind, there's something wrong there.
Yep.
Right? Because if you can choose to be anything, just be kind. The rest will happen.
I think that's the takeaway with this movie. Don't be Nancy.
No.
Don't be a Nancy in a world where you can be a Sarah.
Exactly. Right? Now Sarah learns her lesson throughout the movie, right? I mean, she learns the hardest possible way that throwing yourself at a boy is not the best way to deal with your problems in life, right?
I also think that she was taught by the wrong person, someone that didn't know their right from their wrongs.
True.
Being Nancy.
Now, the shop owner does try, though.
Red's for love. Black, actually... Why you didn't read that? Explains it all.
I do like that the shop owner does try to get her on the right path. It's just there's too much going on at the time for Sarah to listen to it well.
Yeah,
and that in itself is kind of an interesting piece, right?
I think at that moment in the movie, Sarah was kind of joined in on the fun with the two other girls following Nancy.
Yeah, as Nancy's just going,
they're also trying to steal stuff. Fun, it's scary, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's witches gone wild without the nudity. I mean,
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it.
Now that needs to be a t-shirt. That needs to be a t-shirt that we make.
Witches Gone Wild.
Witches Gone Wild. There we go. In fact, I will set up that t-shirt in the shop. The link will be down in the description. If you guys want a Witches Gone Wild shirt, you can pick it up here. Okay?
I love that.
All right. So, yeah, now we've both seen conflicting information on Firuza Balak and her connection to craft.
Yeah, so I mean, Firuza, if you're watching, I don't know, maybe you are, if you could set the record straight. I heard with one place that she was practicing at the time of doing this and for many years after that. I also heard that afterwards that it was misinformed that it wasn't her, that it was actually Rachel True, the water character. And funny enough, if you go on Amazon, yes, I'm going to plug something that like we're not affiliated with.
Do it.
True Heart Intuitive Tarot on Amazon by Rachel True. She's been practicing for a while. In terms of what path, I have no idea, but it says that you know, she's actress best known for her role in The Craft, lifelong occultist. She's been reading tarot cards long before being cast in the 90s witch cult classic. Now she shares her tarot knowledge. And what I find very interesting is that all the cards are multicultural.
That's cool.
So it's not whitewashed. Yay!
Well, I mean, the Rider-Waite deck is pretty, you know, mostly it's white people, but I mean, I've got a deck based on the Rider-Waite deck.
Yeah.
That's actually a, well, for example, on mine, the magician, is not just using magical stuff, but he also has cybernetic, like he has a cybernetic arm, and he's black.
Cool.
Right? Well,
wow.
Yeah, my whole deck is based on the old World of Darkness RPG series.
Okay.
So it uses a lot of that dark gothy imagery in the deck, but it's presented in very bright colors. You'll have to check it out. I'll show it to you sometime.
Oh, that's really so cool.
In fact, I'm thinking about or the Rogue Council around Halloween of doing my show in such a way that people can ask for predictions and I will read their cards live on the air.
Oh, that would be really, really cool.
Right? So, you know, more reasons to tune in, guys.
Absolutely. I also saw that there is a version of the Rider-Waite that is also multicultural.
Yeah.
As well. So that's really cool.
And I'd like to point out too that, I mean, there are other divination techniques out there that are used by various cultures overall over time. I mean, the I Ching is very, very popular in Asian countries. A lot of the Norse people tend to use runes. There's all kinds of different divination techniques out there that come from different cultures. And I 100% recommend learning about them because they're fascinating, really give you an interesting look into the culture that used that system. So getting back to Firuza, I have it on very good authority that she is, through sources that I can't name on YouTube, that she does have some accreditation in Storiga, which is the Italian version of witchcraft. So that may be why she's not saying necessarily that she's a witch, but she still kind of is. So it may be one of those, you know, very careful wordplay sort of moments.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few celebrities out there that are that hold that secret very close.
Well, you know, funny you should mention that. My very good friend Cameron Pasha, who is talking about joining me for the Portrait of Dorian Gray video, is very, very in tune with the occult in Hollywood. So come check that video out because I'm sure we're going to get deep into the darker side of mysterious Hollywood. So
that would be very cool.
Yeah, especially because he takes a very sulfy spin on it too. So for him, it's all, you know, jinns and very cool depictions in his culture, which are fascinating to learn about too. So yeah, we covered some of the big stuff there. Now I understand originally they were going for a PG-13 rating on this.
They did everything in the book, didn't they?
Oh boy, they tried hard to get that, but there was no way the MPAA. Well, there's no way the MPAA was going to give this anything but an R rating.
Yeah,
there was no way, and I personally would have preferred they lean into it, right?
Yeah,
like just go for it. Go for the swears. Go for, you know, tasteful nudity, like whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah,
like because I think that would have been fun, right?
Yeah, that would have been a very, very different movie,
right? I mean, it could have been an interesting one at the very least, and you know, if they were ever going to do a remake of this movie in the modern day, right? I would love to see them lean into a hard R rating.
Mm-hmm.
Like just go for it. Show it as gritty and raw and, I mean, mostly real. Obviously, you're going to have to add in a little bit of fantastic elements to it. So, but you know, there were some crazy scenes involving like various animals. And you were mentioning, like at the end there, where everything just seems to overflow with snakes and bugs and various stuff. You knew a fair bit about that scene.
Yeah, I I watched this documentary. They were talking about all the snakes and animals and stuff that they had to use. So they definitely pulled in a lot of cards in Hollywood to see if they could get as many. They used pythons, boas, water snakes, garter snakes. I don't understand how they all kind of like chilled together and didn't really like kill each other. I don't know how that happened. Rat snakes, and apparently a 10-foot Amazon constrictor, which is cool to see, scary to be near.
Well, I mean, okay, so I've had a Burmese python, which is a constrictor as well, and I've posed for photos with it, with it around my neck and everything.
Like, that it's okay, that it's not gonna bite me or something like that. I'm cool with snakes. Spiders can't do it. No, hard no.
Well, when it comes to snakes, I mean, so long as they're fed and that they're not necessarily at their really active temperature, they're really just super chill and lazy.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how they managed to get them all to kind of hang out together, as they fed everybody before scene.
Probably.
And they're all just kind of sitting there like, you know, in a food coma basically on the set.
I know that the shower scene when Sarah's running and the rat falls on her head, that was an extra because she was like, oh no. No.
Well, I mean, can you blame her? Right?
I mean, if it was a pet rat and fell on me, with the fact that I now have had pet rats, that doesn't bother me. But to freak out with a rat like that, that would be hard for me to do. So maybe I probably
wouldn't. I mean, now I'll admit I'm kind of the opposite of you. I have zero problem with spiders. You know, I don't know. I kind of find them cool, but I'd have serious issues with rats. There is some other like neat little snippets of trivia. For example, that book, The Invocation of the Spirit, that Nancy's reading from the magic shop, that has the animated GIFs in it, that like would be possibly the coolest magic book if it actually existed. But yeah, that book is actually the book that they actually used is the Book of Ceremonial Magic by author Edward Waite. He's a well-known occultist, has been involved for ages. The book does discuss invoking spirits, although the focus of the entire book is very different in comparison to what is actually in the film, right?
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know who Arthur Waite is, he's the person that's connected to the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck.
Yeah. Which, I mean, tarot in itself could be a whole video. We could talk about the history of that, because there's some really cool stuff. I love that it just started as a medieval card game and people were like, you know, maybe we can use this for like some crazy magic shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly started happening, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we can talk a little bit about we've talked about some of the themes. One of the other things that I noticed a lot is there's a lot of themes involving mirrors in the movie.
Yeah. I was rewatching that back because I was looking through the different things and I noticed that somebody mentioned that as well. And I noticed they would always walk by mirrors. They would always do something. It never really clicked years ago. And now rewatching it, I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Now, I mean, now magical, you know, mirrors have been used for magical stuff for forever in some form or another, because it creates that kind of, there's something almost otherworldly about looking into a mirror and seeing a reflection back that doesn't necessarily fit how you feel about yourself, but it is kind of true.
Yep.
On top of that,
shadow work.
Right. On top of that, also historically, mirrors were backed with silver. In alchemical spheres, silver is one of the most pure metals of all. So it's like you're seeing the purest version of you reflected back, which is, I think, where a lot of the occulty kind of connection with mirrors comes from.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
So when we're seeing the girls in Craft, we do kind of get that almost impression, right? Because when Sarah sees herself kind of look back, that level of reflection we see a lot from Sarah.
Yeah.
So that kind of reflection there where she's looking back and thinking about the past of the situation, I feel is an interesting subtext for occultists in the room.
Yeah. My favorite scene, and will always be my favorite scene, was when Rochelle's reflection turned in the same direction and didn't look at each other. They went that way. And I was like, how did they do that? It's crazy. And now I understand how they did it. But I think the message behind it, how it's almost like her shadow self was almost embarrassed at what she did magically to somebody else to harm someone.
Yeah.
And the line that Laura Lizzie says, and she had no answer but to back up and get herself in position right next to that mirror. And she looked in the direction because somebody said something. And she didn't notice that her reflection looked in the same direction and didn't want to see her face.
Right.
That spoke volumes to me even back then.
I definitely feel like when you guys rewatch it, and I really hope you do rewatch The Craft after this, look at those scenes and consider the subtext of those messages, right? Consider that we're looking at the purest version of themselves, almost rejecting themselves in a lot of ways, or trying to show them the truth of their situation, and they're just not willing to look. They're just not willing to look at that reflection of themselves, which admittedly is a hard thing to do sometimes, but so important. You were mentioning that you caught another one of those like cool little foreshadowing Easter eggs as well.
Chris Hooker. I didn't realize this for years.
Okay.
He's a football player. His number's 86.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. I was like, what? Okay, for those of you that don't understand what the heck I'm talking about, 86 is when you off someone.
So his fate was kind of sealed early on.
Oh, completely. I love when filmmakers do that. I love when they have like these tiny little Easter eggs that you'll never know until you get like 20 years, 30 years later, and you're like,
or like somebody like us does a ridiculous deep dive.
Yeah, that's why I like rewatching movies, because literally I caught that while I was watching the movie and went, I'm sorry, what?
There you go. So yeah, I mean, there's some really crazy stuff that happens in this movie that's just beautiful little pieces of foreshadowing. And I mean, you can definitely see now why, given the impact of this movie, how an entire generation of baby witches were basically born from this movie. That, they saw this, they were like, this is so cool, I want to be one of those girls, or I want to be one of those people. Definitely came together. Oh, you caught another piece of the foreshadowing as well with the priest's sermon?
Yeah, again, so I was rewatching this and I never paid attention to the priest's sermon when Chris became first obsessed with Sarah, and they're in the sermon and stuff. He literally says, and I quote, "Do not compare yourself to thy heavens above, When man thinks himself equal to God, that's the moment he is lost, foreshadowing the end of the story. And I was like, oh no.
Right. I mean, that's perfect though. I mean,
it makes sense. I was just like, why did I not hear that? It's the stuff that goes on in the background. You're paying attention to the foreground as the new movie watcher, and you forget all the little tiny Easter eggs in the background that happen.
oh yeah.
I do that with movies all the time.
And that's the best part of like some of these movies, right? Is going through later and realizing some of the cool stuff that the authors put there to kind of subconsciously get you into the right frame of mind. And really, when we talk about that kind of message, you know, we see that in all kinds of mythologies. Everything from Icarus and Daedalus, you know, trying to fly too close to the sun, right? Yep. To that whole concept that basically heroes or our better nature tends to get killed in that snare of pride, right?
Yep.
And really that is Nancy's progression, isn't it?
Yeah.
She wanted control over her life, which to be fair was kind of out of her control at the time. She got it, but she let it go to her head.
Yeah.
And she decided that she was great enough to be able to handle anyone or anything ever. And what was the ramification of that? Exactly what we see. She, you know, her wings melted in the sun and she fell.
Yeah.
Why? I can. Ow! Ow! Ow!
You gave something up, but it ain't the power.
But I can fly! I'm flying! I'm flying! I'm flying!
See, the funny thing is that this movie totally attracted me to the craft, not because of how crazy everything was, but because of how I saw the paganism aspect of it, and that I could have that kind of family
dynamic,
dynamic, and that it's something that I have always been attracted to, that weird and wonderful, magical fairyland, unicorns, witches. I was never into the princesses. I was always into the villains in Disney, all that sort of stuff. Instead of me asking for something to happen, like in Christianity, praying to God to make something happen, and it may or may not happen, that's God's will, I'm actively doing something and trying to work this so-called spell to better my life or help someone or whatever. And it's always with the intent of no harm. However, in this movie, these 4 girls are the poster children of harming people.
Right. Like it's kind of like, this is almost like a textbook in what you shouldn't use your powers for.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just about everything they do. And I mean, it's kind of interesting to look at that. And the movie does come back to the threefold law of whatever we send out is going to come back 3 times as hard, good or ill. And that is a very, very pagan, very witchy message to put out there. And that I really loved. To me, what always makes me feel so wonderful about this movie is those moments before the rituals begin, like before they start doing magic. You know, they get this look on their face like they're determined to do something. They're determined to become what they've wanted to become. They've mentally prepared themselves for it. And that is so much craft. It is so much. I don't know if you've ever walked into a ritual space or sometime when you've made the decision to make action, that you walk in this laughy, fluffy, bunny sort of attitude. You know, we walk in, we're mentally there. We're ready to go. We have that goal, that mission in mind, and that laser beam focus on what we're trying to do. Absolutely. And yet there's still that joy and that wonder. And, you know, we even get blown away by sometimes some of the stuff that happens, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and that coming across to me was wonderful, right? Like, for me, what I love about magic is the magic itself. It's like almost the the science behind it in a lot of ways, like the if I do this, I get this result ish kind of thing.
Yep.
And you know, seeing people experiment like that, like I was doing at that time, was amazing. And I got that they had to add conflict and whatnot for dramatic event, right? Like, you know, if you were going to do a totally realistic version of The Craft today, it would probably be super friggin' boring. I totally get why they had to, you know, put in some bad girls.
Yeah.
Right. Which, you know, normally I'd be really down for, but, you know, I mean, we're talking about a Craft movie here, not the other kind of movie. But anyway, that's what really brought me into it.
Yeah.
So, you know, with that in mind, I mean, this movie has a legacy attached to it, like a big time legacy. If not for just in our community, because I don't know how many times I've been invited over to pagan movie night, and this is one of the movies in the stack.
Yep.
Right. Like it's always one of the movies. Yeah. I mean,
you go to a pagan household and they don't have that in their list of things, you know, you've done wrong.
Right. Like there's something wrong there. Like either they've got it on streaming and are just not telling you, or, you know, they're not fun witches.
Yeah.
Right.
I heard that they have a German name for it.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard about this. The movie goes by a different name in Germany that is possibly the greatest name of all time. Can you hold it together?
Club.
Yeah, there you go. Right? The Hexen Club.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
Right? I mean, that does sound like the club that you and I would have joined, though. Right? Like 100% in high school.
With spikes.
Right? I mean,
and
you know.
PVC.
Right. And, you know, possibly some leather in there too. Right? You know.
Yeah.
There'd be at least 1 or 2 studded leather jackets there.
Yeah.
Right. The studs may have been put in by Bedazzler, but you know, still there.
Yep.
So no, and it's also got like this almost reverence among a lot of people, because this is what got them into craft, right? It's taken on like almost a life of its own in like a, you know, I'd almost be the dare to call it the occult classic, right?
I see what you did there.
Well, you know,
I like it.
And I mean, you know, it's not just crafty people that like this movie. There's a whole bunch of other people that have drawn inspiration from it. You know, you just found out about Dark Horses.
Yeah, the song Dark Horse by Katy Perry, the whole darn song. It like I urge anybody to, like, if you have seen the movie The Craft, go back and watch or listen to Katy Perry's Dark Horse.
The music in The Craft is like early 90s perfect album material.
Totally on my playlist.
Right?
Still.
I mean, it at the time, the soundtrack sold incredibly well for a movie soundtrack, simply because it had all those beautiful, just on the edge of dark kind of songs.
I honestly think that was the shift with soundtracks for movies. They didn't realize that a silly little $15 million movie was going to make 55 point something, whatever, million dollars, because, you know, at this time, it was all about the boys. It was never about the girls. And nobody really cared about music in movies. Like, one of my all-time favorite movies is the Terminator series. Terminator 2 had 2 songs.
Right.
And this movie literally, like, blasted all of these songs to the point where, like, Bell Book and Candle, Dangerous Type, all of these different songs are still played today because of this movie.
Yeah.
That is how many years old?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, even today, you see people remixing these songs and remaking them and making them their own. This is, if you're going to pick up a movie soundtrack or like this is your entryway to, I guess, a modern movie soundtrack, this is a really good space to start.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would also argue that the Buffy the Vampire Slayer soundtrack fits into this rather nicely as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking for like the 5-disc playlist, you know, let us know. We'll put it down in the comments if you decide to comment on it. You know, we'll put in the 5 dark, witchy, but not too witchy soundtracks that you should have. Because of how good they fit in that vibe. They're like really good, perfect-ish Halloween movies. Or like Halloween soundtrack songs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to know, if you're watching this, what is your favorite scene in The Craft? Like I said, my favorite scene was the mirror scene with Bonnie when her reflection looked away from her. That was my favorite scene.
I think for me, my favorite scene is when all of the girls are heading to that kind of initiation scene and they're getting off the bus.
Oh yeah, we are the weirdos, mister.
That's it. That was like, you know, I'll admit, I 100% have a thing for the wrong women. Okay? Like, if she's going to probably try to remove my heart some point during the evening, I'm probably interested in her. Right? Fair. Like, you know, that's the only way I can describe it. And that look, that got Fruza on my wall as a teenager, not gonna lie.
I think she would be the tarot description of the devil card.
Right?
Because the devil doesn't mean the devil, it means temptation. And that devilish smile of hers was so tempting. Perfect for that movie. So perfect. Like, I don't think anybody can replicate that smile, that huge,
big
the Harley Quinn smile, insane.
Who is incidentally also on my list. So, you know.
There you go.
Right? So, you know, textbook example of why, if I'm interested in you, you should probably have a mental health check. Just
saying.
I think this is probably one of, if not the best portrayal of witchcraft, real witchcraft on screen, as close as you're going to get. Even with some of the completely fantastical elements that we've talked about. You know, at the very least, the beginning scenes of this, before they get into the weird invoking the spirit and the dead animals washing up on the beach, which they simply took advantage of for the scene. There was a mass beaching recently.
Oh.
And they just ran out and grabbed that scene.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah. So, like, it wasn't an intentional thing. Like, they weren't originally going to put it in the movie, but they were like, there's a whole bunch of whales beached on the shore. Get out there now. Let's get this quick.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
So that, you know, these sort of pieces of it, like, that's about when it starts going off the rails. But for the most part, I mean, yeah, this is a fairly accurate portrayal overall, as close as you're going to get incidentally, without like getting into, you know, going and experiencing some stuff yourself, because that's part of a big thing of us is, you know, we don't really talk about it much. We encourage you to come out and experience and see if it's right for you. And if it's not, that's cool too.
You'll never have a witch knocking on your door asking you if you have heard the word of Akate.
No, but I mean, I have been tempted to do that. I'm not gonna lie. There were some, you know, like I'll admit I have really considered like getting like full into like Norse garb and going up to a door and being like, have you heard the good word that Thor has not forsaken you? You know?
I will join you if you ever do that.
Like, I think it would just be funny, especially if we like did it in Utah.
Anywhere in the Bible Belt would be
right.
Hilarious.
Right. I mean, you know,
funny in general might get, you know,
Yeah, I mean, like we might have to wear some bulletproof armor when we do it, but you know. But yeah, I mean, you know, and I guess this is the best way to put it. I would never recommend to anyone that craft is for them. What I would say is come out, experience what we have to offer, and if you think that it's right for you, then go deeper. If you don't, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Right? You know, if anything, it'll help you decide what you do believe in.
Well, that's kind of how I joined, because like it only got deeper and deeper and deeper over the years. I have been into this since I was a kid. But I was alone in high school, got all the books, got all the tarot cards, got all whatever. And then I moved from a small town to a big city, and I saw a random ad on Facebook for Toronto Pagan Pride Day. And that was my very first event. And that was what made me go, okay, I'm home.
Yeah.
That was the thing for me. And that might not be for other people, and that's okay. And that's how we come at things. We're not here to convert people.
No.
And honestly, we'll turn you away 20 times before you're like, no, I still am interested. And they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, then come.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't know necessarily if we turn people away either. I feel it would be more like you have to show a level of commitment before people will really take you serious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but that all being said, you know, one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this series, especially this particular movie, was to show off a side of the culture that a lot of people don't necessarily get to see in their daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, just like in the movie, how you have some bad actors and some genuinely good people who are trying to do right by people, you have that in every belief system, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Gabrielle is definitely one of the good ones, right? She's definitely one of the nice, friendly, shiny ones that you can go to for anything. And she will definitely back you. As I've said, of course, you know, I'm just the mean old curmudgeon that sits in the library and thinks deep thoughts. Why you're breaking my rep now, you know?
He's a teddy bear.
You wound me, madam. You wound me.
No.
But, you know, I will say this. If anyone is interested ever, they can always feel free to privately message me, either on Twitter or here or anywhere. If you do want to learn more, we will put you in touch with people in your area that can help you discover if this path is right for you. It may not be, but we'd be willing to do that for anybody. Or if you guys have any further questions, like, feel free, right? You can basically ask us anything. The question may be, oh, I'm sorry, that's, you know, there are secrets that I have to uphold, but we will point you in the right direction to get the answers.
I mean, at the very least, there's other videos around here on YouTube that I know I've watched. If there's anything of interest to you, like learning tarot, there's many videos on that. So go forth.
Now, admittedly, they are nowhere near as cool as we are.
No,
but they're pretty decent. Because, I mean, I don't think you can get cooler than the two of us. Now, I guess we do have to talk quickly about the elephant in the room. Yes, there is a sequel to this movie in theory. I say in theory because they named it The Craft Legacy. And I will say this. If this is the legacy that the craft is handing down, the religion's dead.
Yeah.
That's the only way to describe it. The second movie has nothing to do with craft in any way, shape, or form. It creates an artificial bad guy that doesn't exist. It puts characters in bizarre situations that never would really come up. Nobody is as screwed up as the characters in that movie. And they used the original characters from the movie in very, very poor ways and didn't do a very good job of it at all. So I do recommend skipping the sequel.
Yeah, it didn't even like pay enough homage to the first one to even earn the title of The Craft.
Yeah, like I feel like it would have been like a really good Charmed fan fiction, but not
Probably
a Craft movie.
That either worked on it or really did like Charmed. There's one scene that I thought was hilarious in that movie when they were trying to make a spell potion and they used the dude's bong. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, straight up, I don't know why they would use the bong anyway. I mean, look, do you know a witch without 1,000 little bottles lying around?
No, but they were in the guy's room.
Right, but I mean, even then, like,
room, they didn't have their stuff. They were ill prepared. But I think the takeaway with that scene is use what you got.
Fair enough. But that being said, like, okay, straight up, you and I probably know about 4 witches that if we just said to them at random, heck, I'm even willing to do this. The next time we go to like a witch meetup thing, just say out to the crowd, hey, anybody who's got a spare bottle, put your hand up. I guarantee you there will at least be 4 or 5 hands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what we do, right? It's like, you ever notice how every Wicca male either has long hair or a goatee? Or both?
Yeah, or both.
Right? Like, it's a universal thing. It just kind of happens, right?
Yep. It's an aesthetic.
True. Unless I got like the Gerald Gardner crazy hair. Which, if you ever see
a couple people with that.
Right. Which, for the record, guys, look up Gerald Gardner, look up the dude's hair. It's insane. Okay? It's completely off the rails. You want wizard? Freaking wizard, you know?
Yep.
So, you know, I dream of having hair like that one day. Right?
I find that the more genius you are, the crazier your hair.
Fair. I think you can also make that argument with eyebrows. Like, when you get like the crazy Einstein eyebrows, you know, there's something going on. Yeah.
I love that.
There we go. So, yeah, I think we've covered just about everything I can think of for this movie.
Yeah.
You know, other than to say, guys, take the time, give it a rewatch. Let us know your favorite scenes. Let us know if you have any questions. We will answer them to the absolute best of our ability. Ask us almost anything. We will answer it. But with that in mind, we've rambled on quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
So let's end it here.
All right.
Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.